Here in plenary, it's my pleasure to invite Donna Leinwand Leger to the stage, and she'll be introducing our next session, which is Moving Mountains, Cleaning Oceans. Donna is a digital media leader, and she's the former managing editor of USA Today. So welcome, Donna.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm gonna let everyone get settled for a second, and then we'll get started. Everybody feeling energized? Okay, good, because we're talking trash next. All right, so imagine the biggest pile of garbage you've ever seen. Now multiply it until it's about the size of Texas. That's the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It is so vast that it actually has an east side and a west side. This giant vortex of trash is actually made up of tiny bits of plastic, ranging from microscopic to the size of about a fingernail. Scientists estimate that the patch contains 80,000 metric tons of microplastic. Where does it come from? It comes from you. It comes from me. It comes from everyone in this room. A plastic water bottle that's left carelessly on a beach in California can be taken by the tide and then swept by the currents into the Pacific vortex. There it can remain for years. The sun breaks it down into tinier and tinier little particles, but they never fully degrade. The US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Marine Debris Program estimates that it would take 67 ships 1 year to clean up less than 1% of the North Pacific Ocean. The harm is immense. Sea creatures actually mistake the plastic for food. The plastic blocks sunlight from reaching the plankton, which disrupts the food chain. And eventually, all those microplastics find their way back to us and into our bodies. And by the way, the Great Pacific Patch isn't the only one. The Atlantic and the Indian Oceans also have trash vortexes. Here today to discuss how to reverse this problem, we have some very distinguished conversationists. We start closest to me. Ameenah Gurib-Fakim served as president of the beautiful island nation of Mauritius from 2015 to 2018. She is a member of the Council of Women World Leaders. She also holds a PhD in organic chemistry. She's an entrepreneur, an author, and a mother. Senator Veronica Delgadillo Garcia of Mexico has been a tireless advocate for the environment, as well as championing several legal initiatives to fight against violence against women and for corruption. She's the WPL ambassador for Mexico, and her environmental campaign, which you can read on her t-shirt, is Stop Our Extinction. Next, we have Lana Popovich. She is president of the Central and Eastern European Business Unit of Coca-Cola. She oversees Coca-Cola's businesses in 26 countries. She has a degree in economics from the University of Zagreb in Croatia, and she also chairs Coca-Cola's Global Women's Leadership Council. And finally, at the end, we have Dr. Sonja Schenkel of Paititi Lab. She is an artist and entrepreneur who works at the intersection of art and science. She's a filmmaker with a PhD in sustainable development, and she seeks to reframe negative narratives into positive ones through art. Okay, Ameenah, let's start with you.
Right.
What are the consequences of ocean pollution for Mauritius?
Thank you, Donna. I think you have just summarized some of the impacts of ocean pollution. I think for too long, we have taken dilution as being the solution for pollution. And this is proving to be completely erroneous. And if you look at ocean pollution, like I have rightly mentioned, we find that very often we talk about plastic bags, we talk about many of the plastics as being the major source of pollution. And again, as you have just mentioned, is that most of these plastic containers or ropes or whatever it is, we see the impact when it comes to marine life being affected. We see increasing this turtle being, of course, surrounded by these ropes. But what we don't see is the microplastics that is also being dumped into the ocean through the river waterways, and what goes round comes round. And what we're witnessing increasingly is that the penguins, for example, the fat has got plastic. Our fish is getting more and more plastic, and to assuage our conscience, we tend to think that we use biodegradable plastic. But biodegradable plastic, you need special conditions for them to become biodegradable. It doesn't exist in nature. It doesn't exist either in the marine environment. So that's one thing we have to reconcile with. But as again, you have just mentioned, the weather, the sunlight, it degrades the plastic, and it releases, in some instances, some nasty chemicals which have been proven to be endocrine perturbators, and they're affecting, for example, the man in terms of sperm count, for example. I mean, these are things that we still haven't grappled with, that it is impacting our daily lives. And you have mentioned my country, Mauritius. We have, of course, as one of the pillars, the tourism sector. So it's in our interest to see to it that plastic is reduced to a minimum, and we have to ensure that it doesn't get in the ocean. So this is, of course, the big debate that we will be discussing in the course of our conversation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, thank you. So Veronica, why are you so committed to an environmental agenda in Mexico?
Thank you, Donna. First of all, we must be clear that we are living in a global climate crisis. We must face, we must recognize. Because if we want to keep alive, if we want to have a future, not only for us, but the ones that are coming, we must recognize this situation. And the big problem is that these situations have been provoked by us, by people. We are in front of a mass extinction. And it's the first time that a living being on Earth makes this to happen. So we are the responsibles to stop the global warming, to stop this global crisis. So understanding that all human beings have been done wrong things in order to change the vital resources that we need. We have been poisoning the water that we drink. We have been poisoning the air that we breathe. We have been poisoning the air that gives us food. So we are ending the opportunities of our life on Earth. So here the ocean works a very important role. We destroy the ecosystem putting garbage on the ocean. We destroy the ecosystem putting petrol waste on the oceans. So we need to understand that we are doing all our best in order to make this problem to get bigger and non-stopping. So if we want to focus on this subject related with the ocean, we must be clear that 90% of the garbage in the ocean is made by plastic, and we must do something about it. So if we want to keep alive, if we want to keep the ecosystem working, if we want the economic system working, we must be responsible for cleaning the ocean and stop the big companies to throwing the waste into the ocean. And we must be clear, if we want a future for everyone, we should start working on ocean issues, on environmental issues, and doing our best. So for me, it's a very important agenda. That's why I say we should stop our extinction, because not only parliamentarians, not only big companies, everyone in this room and out of the room should do something in order to stop the ocean contamination and the ocean pollution.
Okay. All right, big companies. So Coca-Cola produces 3 million tons of plastic packaging every year. The environmental group Break Free from Plastic collected nearly 500,000 pieces of plastic waste from beaches and parks and other outdoor areas. And they identified 43% of it as coming from consumer brands such as Nestle, Pepsi, and of course Coca-Cola. And the largest share came from Coca-Cola. So, of course, none of those companies actually tossed those things into the ocean. Consumers did that, so that's us. So tell us, where do you think corporate responsibility begins and ends?
So first of all, thank you, Donna, for having me today. I think that each and every one of us as individuals, and more importantly as companies, should ask ourselves what we control and what we influence. And when I think as a senior leader at the Coca-Cola Company, I think, what do we as Coca-Cola Company control? That's the packaging. And this is where it is our responsibility to put the right packaging out there. And all the efforts that are currently put behind the recyclable packaging and use of the recycled material on plastic is just one fragment of it. But then the use of glass, the use of the paper bottle as an experimental technology that we are currently experimenting with, the refillables, but also using packageless solution. Don't forget that we are not in packaging business. We are in a beverage business. We sell brands that are really creating a certain associations and moments with the consumers that they love to consume. So one is our responsibility of what packaging we're putting out there. The second, it's really what we influence, and when we say influence, this is a serious problem that not one simple solution can address. And influencing our business partners and acting as a role model that not only that industry, but also the governments jointly, we need to find solutions through a collection systems put in place that not one person can resolve on its own. So it's really about influencing joint forces with the governments, the NGOs. The competition makes no sense in this context because it's really not about who is a competitor or not, because we need to work together on finding the sustainable solutions and influencing the right solutions which are meaningful. And the last is influencing consumers. If I would ask anyone here, what do you associate with Coke? I'm sure everybody would say the ads. You know, soon there's going to be a Christmas ad, a Christmas caravan coming, holidays announcement. But what if we use now the ads to inspire the consumers? And that's what we're doing with the Never Settle campaign in our part of the world. That it's our responsibility of all of us. If we bring that bottle to the place where it can be recycled, if bottle is not turned into a waste, but it's turned into a resource to get a second life, I think that it's not only a company's responsibility. Companies influencing through the ads as well as through the messages out there that everyone has a role to play. But again, I'm really not trying to diminish the company responsibility of what packages we're there to offer. Unfortunately, I left my marine bottle in the bag, but it is a beautiful example how tomorrow a marine waste in an experimental technology phase is actually made out of 25% of the ocean waste for the first time to be recycled to the level that it's used as a food or beverage container. And it gives us hope. It definitely gives us hope.
Okay, thank you. Sonja, so to get people, we've talked about responsibility, government responsibility, corporate responsibility, and individual responsibility. Where does the motivation come in to get people to participate in this?
I think the motivation ultimately is not an intellectual game. We have so much data. I think probably most of what you heard just now, you knew. We've been reading newspapers. We follow this field day by day. We know we're at a critical point, and still nothing is happening, or it's happening at a very slow pace. Yeah. So where do we find that drive? And I think my response in that regard would be, we find it in actually feeling. And art can play a role in making us feel again. To have our attention actually in the matter of things, in the material reality of what is happening. And I was telling you while preparing this talk, I went to the beach when I came to Iceland because I like to kind of greet the place when I come and touch the earth and touch the materials. And one of the first things I touched was actually plastic at the beach. And initially, you can say, oh, how terrible. Especially when you then go into the sand and you discover, oh, how nice, there are these little pieces of shells, but these pieces of shells are actually plastic too. And I don't even see the microplastic. So I could be very, well, initially, I must admit, I'm very sad when I feel that and I see that, but that's not a place from where I can act. So the second thing that art may help in doing is to create hope, and I really liked what Lana said, is there's hope. And hope is actually our only option, because by now we have gotten what we should do. We are even afraid, and because we are so afraid, things are moving so slowly. If we were less afraid to really deeply change our system, if we had more hope, and actually psychology teaches us that fear and hope are part of the same spectrum. So either, as long as we stay at the fear spectrum, we feel paralyzed. But once we start moving into hope and say, yes, we can do this, and you can do it, and you can do it, and we all can do it, then something is being, energy is becoming accessible. And I think art can help us doing that.
So that means we are reaching towards solutions. Ameenah, looks like you want to say something about solutions.
Yes, but there's one thing I would like to say as well, because whenever we talk about pollution, we are always focused on plastics. But there's one thing as well we have to bear in mind, that there are other sources of pollution which we may not necessarily attribute to these issues. And I think here is, we all travel, we all will move around a lot. Introduction of invasive species. That's something that we don't talk about very often, and yet it is also a major source of pollution and disruption of habitat. And here, because we are in Iceland, you see so many ships outside here, ballast water. How many species get moved around? And this is where we come. We have spoken about regulation. What are governments doing? Be it to address plastic, be it to address ballast water, be it to address, the stuff tourists bring around in home. And this is again where we find that there is of course a personal responsibility, because we are the change we want to see in this world. And we are talking about going back to plastic again. How many of us do you really need to drink our Coke out of a plastic straw? I mean, honestly, these are, and I know in the United States, for example, they consume about 500 million per day. So where are all these plastics going to? So I think these are things that we have to ask ourselves, to what extent we can be the change that we want to see. And secondly, you rightly mentioned the issue of art. To what extent and how much can we recycle the plastic and be to convert it into art object? Or we can see how, for example, the food and beverage industry can accept recycled plastic into our lives. But I think more importantly, governments have to see to it that our waterways and all the ways in which the pollution gets to the sea, how we can limit the output, our daily output in terms of packaging, in terms of waste overall. Yeah.
So Veronica, what do you think we ought to be demanding of our politicians?
Politicians must do a lot of things related with this agenda in order to have more hope. And of course we need people making pressure to the parliamentarians to change the laws. We need different laws. Thinking about banish, in some cases, single-use plastics. Banish all of it. It's not only the plastic bag, not only the plastic bottle. There are a lot of different types of single-use plastics. So banish those plastics. Of course, we need laws to manage the waste. How can we get back that waste? How can we change that waste into something that is useful for everyone? We need to change the laws in order to force the corporations to be responsible of the things that they have done to the environment, to the ocean, and to all the planet, you know? So if they take part of the responsibility, things could change. So we need laws to force the big companies to change as well their production system, their distribution system, because 4% of the petrol energy is used for just moving the plastic things, you know, and producing the plastic things. So we need to change their system, how they produce the things and how they move these things around the world. Of course, we need laws that help the big companies to be socially responsible, eco-friendly in all ways, in every single ways. Of course, we need governments thinking about this agenda and putting money on it. Maybe in some countries they invest on fuel energy. What about if we start investing on green energy? Because in that way we can help not only the oceans, but we can help the whole planet. So there's a lot of things to do in the parliamentarian area, but we need parliamentarians thinking on this, but as well we need people asking and demanding outside. And of course, at the end, in order to have hope on this issue, we must understand something that we have been saying here. It's the responsibility is of each one of us. Me, like woman, I'm responsible of changing my human habits, my consumption habits, my daily habits. If I change my habits, this could be a different world. It starts not using a single bag, but it ends demanding and acting out of my space in order to change this world.
So, corporate responsibility, we hear a lot about corporations saying they're going green, they're going sustainable. What does it take, Lana, to really embrace that corporate value? How do you change a company internally? What has Coke done? How has Coke made this part of the bottom line? And go.
So, starting, I would really like to share something which changed my perception internally when I understood that there is no bottom line without sustainability being at the core of the company. And if company is not authentic and we just try to serve the pamphlets, tick boxes, then the company is not going to be resilient of today and neither is going to build for the future. And I would say that at Coke for the last 133 years, because we are an old lady, it was constantly reinventing ourselves and recognizing not yesterday that we need to think of tomorrow. We recognized that long time ago, and I really like our CEO James Quincy when he says we need to do the things right way, not the easy way, because I don't even think it's a luxury these days. It's the only way forward. And so when you think about it, only in plastic, Coca-Cola is investing annually around $8 billion in containers. And when I talked earlier about responsibility, then it is our responsibility to work on different solutions. How do we reduce plastic in our containers, in our secondary packaging, but also how do we redirect those investments and new solutions, new technology, package-less options. This is where the responsibilities also of the bottom line comes. But I really have to say that at Coke, just when you think about it, people said, and if I remember correctly, in Nielsen in 1916, they said that 66% of the consumers said that they want to pay more for sustainable products from responsible companies. 76% of millennials said that. 90% of millennials said, I don't want to work for the company which is not sustainable. And 40%, at least in Central and Eastern Europe, of the workforce are millennials. What choice, when you think about it, if the company wants to be here tomorrow? I think that it's only our responsibility how much, whether we're accelerating that pace. As Sonja said, the pace is still not there. And when I think of Coke as a senior leader, but I also think as a mom, I want that pace to accelerate. And this is where we cannot do it alone. And so bottom line is one, and willingness to invest. But again, if there is no infrastructure in place to collect the plastic, it's meaningless. If today you are encouraging people to separate the trash, and I try to put a bottle in this trash on the corridor outside, and you actually see that there's everything there. If there is no individual responsibility, no bottom line is really going to make a difference for tomorrow. So my really headline is, we need to join forces without trying to abolish any responsibility that we have as corporate, but also as individuals.
Yeah. So Sonja, how do you think we should rethink our relationship with plastic? And do you see us at perhaps an inflection point where things are going to really change?
Well, I think, thank you for this question, Donna. I think it's a great news that Lana said that Coca-Cola is really trying to speed up, because although it may seem cynical being the biggest polluter of the oceans with regards to plastic pollution, being Coca-Cola, it's the best position you can have to have an impact. Because you can really move your whole infrastructure. You can send out ships and start collecting all this waste that you've created before anyone sues you internationally for creating the damage. And you can also really start rethinking bottled beverages, because as we all know that recycling is really the emergency aid. Recycling is like what we have to do right now. And I can totally understand the ones who are standing at this recycling bins going like, oh, I have a bioplastic cup, but where do I put it now? Is it bio or is it plastic? So the thing is that with recycling, I'm from Switzerland, and we're probably world leaders in recycling. We like that, very orderly, and we recycle a lot. At least with regards to batteries, I know we are proven world leaders. But the thing is, this recycling then gets sold to China, which makes it is suddenly top leader in having plastic, because they buy everyone's plastic waste. And then it's being recycled, but obviously a lot of it still lands in nature. And by the way, all of the bottles that are actually being recycled, it's only 9%. So we know it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And I think what helps is this a line that we all know is reduce, reuse, and recycle is like really, really at the very last part. And it's definitely not something for bottles and for plastic, given that plastic is also very precious. But having said all that, please don't ban plastic, because I don't know if you know, but we are actually made out of plastic already. Because plastic, and I'm not kidding, this has been proven, and probably some of you know it, this is a study by the WWF, that we eat about a credit card per month. So just to give you a dimension, this is my little souvenir from the beach. So it's 24 grams per month, and maybe that's a weekly doses of what we eat. So yeah, banning plastic means also banning ourselves. But that's, of course, a joke. I think we should really do something, and I really very much prefer my children to eat vegetables than this.
So we only have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to go for some rapid-fire solutions. So if we can only pick one thing to focus on, what would be your #1 priority? And I'll let you think, and you tell me who wants to go first. Ameenah.
No, I think some important issues have been raised here. If you want a future to really address plastic, I think, first of all, we need to change the habit, our own way of doing things. But because we are having the millennials, I think the mindset, the way it's geared, is that I think there's a huge opportunity to work with them and to collaborate with them, because I think it's an acquired population already in terms of sustainability issues. I think we engage with them, and I'm sure the future will be through this dialogue, through this narrative with them, and to see to how they can change the way, because change is the most difficult part in our daily lives.
Okay. All right, Lana, I'm going out of order.
I don't think there is a silver bullet. Banning or not plastic, as Coca-Cola, we committed that by 2030, which is knocking at our doors, we're going to collect and recycle every pack that we put out there. It's a bold commitment. Again, Sweden yesterday announced all the packagings are from recycled material. It's another proof point that gives me hope. I don't believe that if we move to glass and we find glasses on the beaches when we try to look for shells, it's going to help us out as one solution, especially because environmental footprint is bigger with glass when it comes to carbon emission than plastic. So I think it's really joining forces all together without a silver bullet for a better future, and all of us have a role to play as companies, as individuals.
Okay, Veronica?
We must understand that we are running out of time. We only have less than 10 years to act. So it's not only to change our relation with plastic, it's not only banishing plastic, it's changing our whole life, changing our human habits, the ways we dress, the ways we eat, the ways we move, the ways we are related with the nature. So we must start thinking about that. We must start thinking that if we don't change the way we are living in this area, the world won't be able to keep our life in the planet. So everyone must act. It doesn't matter if you are a simple human being, because even the best person, the best individual in this earth is contaminating the earth. So we must act, we must be responsible, and we must give hope to others, acting every day.
All right, Sonja.
Well, I believe very strongly in the transformation from a way of seeing at the world that is linear, I bring you my product, to one that is a circle. Because what we're witnessing is actually the circle right now. You bring me the product, but then it's going to go on into the water and coming back to me through the fish I eat. So I'm part of a circle. So making that circle more beautiful and more dignifying to us as human beings, our humanity, is a priority. And yes, I agree. We cannot, solve the challenges ahead with the same way of thinking that we've had so far. So glass may not be the smartest solution, but as we said before, probably dramatically rethink the cycles that we are part of and acknowledge them as well. Yeah.
You want to?
Yeah, I think she has raised a very, very important point in mentioning circular. Because if we are going to go towards a sustainable world, I think from where I come from in the developing world, the circular economy is very much on the agenda. And I think plastic, the way we have produced it, I think there is a good way of making it work again for us. And this is, of course, the promotion as opposed to a linear economy. We can increasingly talk about a circular economy where everybody will benefit. But again, as has been said, the best way to do this is to change the way we do our own business every day. So we are the change we want to see in the world.
Okay. Oh, Sonja, go ahead.
Yeah, just one small point, I think. And if you ask me, the number one priority is stop plastic from entering more the ocean. But that has very strong consequences on really, stop doing what we're currently doing. Yeah.
Okay. Did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. As Coca-Cola, again, talking about the responsibilities of the company, even though no one from Coke puts plastic on a truck and then loads the truck into the sea or any ocean. Actually, from 1995, and it gives you a severity of an issue. Coke is a founding partner with Ocean Conservancy, with a Trash-Free Seas Alliance, and the last, from 95 onwards, there was 220,000 pounds of trash collected. And obviously, it's not about Coke bottles then, and nobody's handpicking when collecting trash. And 375,000 miles of coastline has been cleared. By the way, I was told that Mauritius was part of it. However, you actually see how not enough this is. How no matter that there is really no singular, it's not only about Coke doing it with Ocean Conservancy, but there's still bottles coming and the plastic bags coming to an ocean. So unless there is really a unified, synchronized efforts that everyone needs to play, it's just not good enough. The trash is piling up instead of us cleaning it up.
Okay. All right, well, we have 18 seconds, so it seems to me I have like 18 seconds to sum up. I'm thinking collaboration, partnerships, individual efforts, and changing our own relationship with plastic. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time, and thank you, panelists.